Hi, my name is Leandro Facchinetti, and let's write some code together, shall we? What we have on the menu today is to fix mistakes from the past, because I have recorded several of these episodes now, and of course I made mistakes. I've been coding live this whole time, so I want to revisit some of these mistakes and fix them. The first is in this plugin, the game plugin, which is the simplest plugin you can write, and I made a mistake. But thankfully, this person on YouTube comments caught the mistake, and we are going to fix. So thank you, Mate Solt. I think that's how you say the name, for finding this. Let's fix this. So first, I am going to mute, because all the mistakes I made were in effects that don't change the audio. I guess if they changed the audio, we would have noticed. But in any case, I don't need audio in this episode. So I'm muting and I'm saving our ears in case I make some mistake that produces a loud noise. Now, let's go to the gain plugin and find the mistake. It is right here in a comment. And that's, I guess, another reason why I didn't find this mistake before. It's in a comment, not in code that actually runs. The thing here is I am using log, which should be log base 10, and I was saying log base 10 the whole time during the recording of that episode, but I was not using log base 10, because the log, without any other thing here, is just log base E, the E number. And log base 10 is actually log 10, like that. And that is the mistake. In fact, there was something strange in the recording of that episode, but I just glossed over it. And that is when I showed you, for instance, with a debug variable, I showed you the amplitude of the sample 0, so the sample on the left channel. I showed that amplitude as just a number. And I'm going to reproduce the mistake from before by doing this. And that's what we had. And to see something happening here, I will have to enable this track for recording and enable monitoring. And now there is audio going through the plugin, and we can look at the debug variable. And the debug variable here is, it's in the slider. It should be on the sample. So it updates on every sample. So these numbers are similar to the numbers we would get when we look at meters. They are negative numbers and they fluctuate, but they are very low. It's as if this sound was very quiet, which is not the case. You can see here in the meters that it's ranging around 18, minus 18 dB. But this debug variable is way lower than that. And in the recording of the episode, I noticed this, but I thought, well, I don't know, maybe there is something else going on here that I am not aware of. The problem was the base of the logarithm. When I fix this, now it is more like the meters here. It is ranging around the numbers that we are getting here. They are not exactly minus 18 though, and that is because this meter is averaging a bunch of samples and then taking the level, transforming that bunch of samples into the dB value. And what I'm doing here is just taking one sample at a time. And this averaging, or really just what this is doing is not exactly an average. It has to do with taking the peak of the maximum level on some range of time. And that's not what we are doing. So we are getting values that are not exactly minus 18, but it's closer sometimes, depending on the sample it's picking. It's kind of random like that. And we will look in a future episode into how to make meters like these work. And then I will go in detail about how these meters work and how to get the peak and how this line here works, and even other ways of metering besides this one, which is just peak metering. So yeah, that is the fix. Instead of using log base E, we use log base 10. And since that is such an important thing, for dB conversion, we always want to use base 10, right? That's what we are doing here. It's such an important thing that I'm also going to change everywhere else in the comments, even though it's just a concept here that I'm talking about in these comments. I'm fixing that as well. Okay, so that was mistake number 1. That was the use of logarithm base E. And that was the only mistake in this plugin. So now let's look at the other plugin that I want to fix today, and that is the oscilloscope. And that's a plugin that has several issues. The first of which we have already caught when recording. The move horizontally, and I guess that's the most important issue. The move horizontally is kind of glitchy. It doesn't work at all when you move over this part of the move. It's just completely garbage. And I said, well, it was like already over an hour. That was it for today. We're moving along, and I never fixed this. So now let's come back to this implementation and actually fix this mistake. Well, the change that I thought about this, and there are different ways of solving this. There are two problems here. And the first problem is that we don't have enough samples to show if we go enough to the past, if we slide enough to the left. So let me put this here on this side, not the whole plugin window, just this part. So we have both of them on the screen at the same time. So if you move enough to the past, then I'm not storing the samples to show you. And I tried to solve this by using a variable that would have a range that would only show parts of the thing that we have stored. But that doesn't really work because you could be all the way zoomed out, and then this variable would allow you to go to the left and show you samples that we currently don't have stored. So there are two ways to solve this. One way is to store more samples, and the other way is to allow you to move not as much to the past. And because I kind of like having 3 seconds worth of audio, I am going to just store more samples. And now we doubled the amount of samples that we are showing. So that we are storing, not that we are showing. We are still showing only the same amount, but we are storing a lot more. So even if we go a lot to the past, we will have the samples to show. And that is one solution. That's a trick that works. I'm just storing more, showing just a little, and then I can move that window to the left and to the right, which is what this is doing. So now that is one part of the problem. And having saved this, I can do a full compile reset, and I can move to the past, and that kind of works. But then there is still that glitch. When I move past some point, there is this glitch, and I see just empty. So I can go some to the past, and that is kind of working because I have the samples. There is still this glitch, and this glitch is subtle. When writing this line right here, I was doing that circular buffer thing, that ring buffer thing, and I copied this code from somewhere else, and in this other place, it was guaranteed that I was going back one element at a time. So I was doing always -1, -1, -1. So I would check the boundary in -1, and that worked because I was always going, when doing the circular buffer thing, I was going 1 to the left. So eventually I would reach the number -1 as the index. But then I changed this code and I didn't fix that part of the code. So what I changed is I am now subtracting the offset to begin with. And that doesn't work anymore because now I'm not going one element at a time to the left. I'm going a bunch of elements to the left. And when I do that, I may have gone past -1. I may be on element -25. And then in that case, I will not wrap around and do the right thing with the ring buffer. So the solution here is just to use to use less than or equals. And when I do that and save, and I will do a full compile reset because this is storing samples in memory. So when I do that, and I'm also going to reset this to factory settings, just to make sure that I have a clean slate. And now when I do this, I can move arbitrarily to the past, and there are no glitches anymore because this is doing the correct ring buffer treatment. So that was the mistake. It was a simple less than or equal that I had wrong. Well, there you go. So another thing that is kind of weird is that it has to do with these sliders. That's another bug we noticed while recording, but I couldn't figure it out, so I just left it. And that is, for instance, the offset, the move horizontally. The step is 1. So I should only be able to move integer numbers to the left. But as it turns out, I can move fractional numbers as well. And that is because I have a range that is so wide. I mean, we are talking about 143,000 samples here. We are talking about a lot of samples. So this is a wide range of values for this slider to be in. And the screen doesn't even let you show 143,000 pixels. So there is no way for me to actually land on an integer value on this slider. And if I make this screen bigger, then I may be able to, but not even then. So one thing we could do is to have this range be somewhat wider like this. And then I only have integer values. And that works. But then the screen is kind of jumping around, which I don't like. Right? It's kind of jumping around. It's not smooth. So I think I prefer to have this as 1 and let this be fractional, which doesn't make sense in terms of numbers of samples. But there is a trick. We are using this samples offset thing only in one place, and this is to get the samples counter, which is going to eventually become the index into the buffer. We can find that here. Yes, it becomes the index into the buffer. But as it turns out, in JS effects, if you have something like, I'm going to have something like this. So this is just getting the first element into the big array of values, and that gets me a value. But if I do 0.4, that also works. And I think what it's doing is taking the same as the next one or the one before. It's truncating. Yes, so it's truncating. What it's doing is 0.4 is the same as element 0. So this floor here is actually irrelevant. It doesn't hurt to have it there, but it doesn't help either. It doesn't do anything. That floor is irrelevant. And move still works just fine, even with fractional values working as indices. So that's something that simplifies the code somewhat. And I could increase the range so that we won't only get integer numbers, but you know what? I think I like it better this way. It's way smoother this way. So I'm just going to leave it as that and let the fractional values be. Next, the next mistake is something that I just completely forgot. We are using memory here. We are using this samples array. And in JS effects, it's always a good measure to tell Reaper how much memory your effect is using. When you do that, Reaper is allowed to, though it may not, but it's allowed to change the memory under you. So it's allowed to use that free memory that you are giving it to do something else, which is always nice. So it's always better for you to specify how much memory you are using. And you do that with free membuff. Now I got it. Yeah, so free mbuff. It hints the runtime that the memory above a certain address is free. So now we know that we are only using samples size many elements. So I can say sample size +1, and that is telling Reaper, okay, anything more than this index in that big buffer is free for you to do whatever you want. Okay, so that is memory management, and it's a good practice. It's not exactly a bug in the sense that the code would run, even if you, of course it would. You saw this running already, but this is more efficient maybe in some ways, and it's definitely a better practice to do this. And then finally, I want to do some revisiting on these parameters, these sliders, because I think some of them don't work quite nice. The first one is hold, and I was using this name because I was referring to something that happens in the original oscilloscope that comes with Reaper. That's the language it uses to talk about this idea of holding. But really, it makes more sense to have something that looks like play, pause, which resembles what you would see in any app that has to do with audio, play and pause. And it's just changing the labels, right? It's still doing the same thing, but it's changing the labels. And now it doesn't make sense to show any word here because this is speaking for itself. So what I would want is to have nothing at all here. But if I do that, if I just remove the word, then the slider goes away. Well, I could put some spaces, right? Well, no, that doesn't work. The slider is still not showing up there, but there is a trick. I could put any dummy value like a dot, and then it would come back. But there is a dummy label that is even smarter, that doesn't show. And that is a non-breaking space. It's like a space, and this is a hack, I acknowledge that. But it's like a space, but it cannot be broken. So it's a character that is, it looks like a space on the page. But if you had a line in like Microsoft Word or any text editor that breaks lines automatically, it could not break a line automatically on that space. So it's a different character, but it still shows up as space. It just means something different in terms of line breaking. So what I could do is use that character as my label. And to do that on a Mac, I can hold Option and hit space. On any other computer, you can definitely go to the link in the description below to find the code that we are writing, and you can copy and paste this character anywhere you want. But now that I have a non-breaking space here, it doesn't show anything here, but it shows me this slider, this combo box, option box, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so now it shows me play and pause, which I kind of like this way. And I can rename this variable hold to be play and pause. So I guess this would be pause, right? If I am playing, then I should hold. Yeah, so that's another thing we can do. We could have this hold variable be play, which is a more active thing. And then if we are playing, then we are holding the sample, we are storing the samples. So I'm going to rename this hold variable everywhere to be play. So I could do this on this editor, but it's kind of weird. So I'm going to open this on an external editor, and I'm going to do a replace because there is no search and replace in this text editor, but there is one in this one. So I'm going to rename hold to be play, or actually is playing. Why not? And then I'm going to replace all. Oh, no, undo. Because in JS effects, we don't use camel case, we use snake case. So it's playing like that. And then I save and I close text edit, and then Reaper noticed that I changed the file, so it asks if I want to reload, which I do, and now I have is playing everywhere. Now, of course, this variable is reversed, because is playing, it should be true to begin with, because that's the first value. So I'm going to say that the default value is 1, and that we can go from 1, which is playing, to 0, which is pause, and we go 1 at a time. So now, I also want to change this because I want to collect variables if the thing is playing. And here I want to do some changes as well. I don't like the way this line reads. It's kind of wonky. So what I'm going to do is, if ode is playing is equal to 0, which means I'm paused, and is playing is 1, which means I just turned from paused to playing, then I am going to reset everything. So I'm going to save that, full compile reset. Oh, I also need to reset this to factory settings, full compile reset. Okay, so what's going on here? Why is this always reversed? I don't know. Could this be should this be a -1? No, that doesn't work at all. It's now doing the opposite. So who knows? Maybe I have a new bug when trying to fix bugs. Isn't that fun? You know what? I think I just learned something that I didn't know about JS effects. And that is, if you have a combo box like this, then you should go from 0 to a bigger number with increments of 1, and you should not play with that. So I'm going to reverse the logic again. And if the ode is playing is going from pause to play, and then I'm going to open this on an external editor, and anywhere I say playing, I am going to replace this with paused and replace all. Save, close, come back to Reaper, reload, and now we have a button that reads as is paused, and it starts with play. You can move it to pause. The ode is paused is 1. In other words, you were paused and now you're not anymore. Then I reset. And here, if I am not paused, then I do the collection of the samples. So now let's do a full compile reset to factory settings. Definitely clean slate here. So this is playing and this is paused. I can go to the past. And then when I restart, it starts fresh. So that is cleaning up when I move from paused to play. Okay, learned something. Now let's talk about this zoom horizontally, because it starts here on the right, and when I move to the left, it zooms in. And I don't like that it's in this right to left order. I would prefer if it were on the other way around, so like this. And then I just save, and I'm going to just do a full reset here because now I'm jaded. So yeah, now this is going from left to right, and I'm zooming in as I scroll from left to right, and the range is still the same. From all the samples, 3 seconds in 48 kilohertz, to 10 samples, the most zoomed in you can get. Next, this zoom multiplication factor is not enough in many cases. I would like to make this a lot bigger, so I'm going to make this 20. And now I can make this a whole lot bigger and a whole lot more zoomed in if necessary. That is definitely better. Now, the move horizontally is also kind of reversed, isn't it? Think about the way you can scroll in, for instance, here in Reaper. If I scroll with this thingy to the right, then the materials go to the left, right? I'm scrolling to the right, and the timeline is going to the left. And I guess that makes more sense. That is kind of how it works in most other apps. So I'm just going to do that here as well. And I'm going to change this from right to left. So the samples offset starts with this number until this number. And now it starts on the right, moves to the... So now that when I move to the right, the material... Let me pause to show this. When I move to the right, the material goes to the left, like so. Scrolling to the right, material going to the left. Another thing, this number doesn't make sense anymore because it was a hack to try to make things work with the samples offset, but it wasn't working because really the solution, a better solution would be to do this, which we just did. So I can really scroll all the way to the past. I don't need to take this offset of 10 samples, really. I can scroll all the way to the left, and it works like so, all the way to the left. Next, the move vertically factor, I am happy with that one. So I'm not going to change it. But there are a few more refactorings that I want to do. So let's get to them. The first is this line here on the bottom that is setting up the Y position to begin with before we do a loop going from right to left. So I noticed that even if I comment this out, you are not able to tell. It goes to the right, and it may be writing a line from the top here down to the bottom, but even if I zoom all the way in, you're still unable to notice that this is a problem. You are unable to notice that the cursor started here on the top. And I guess this has to do with just, if I just uncomment this, you probably won't see any difference. Even if I zoom all the way in, there may be a difference here on the right. If I comment this out, it's slightly junky here when I have 10 samples on the screen, but that's so uncommon. And if you're looking at that close of a window, things might not even make a lot of sense anyway. So I thought I would simplify the code by just removing this line, which is strictly speaking the wrong thing to do. But also it makes the code simpler. It kind of works. I'm happy this way, so I'm removing that line. Also, another thing that I'm happy with is this thing. I'm doing this all over the place because I need to get the middle of the screen here in many cases, the middle vertically of the screen. So what I'm going to do instead is have a variable, extract a variable. So I'm going to have a variable that reads jeffects age middle or center. Middle or center? I guess middle. And then I'm going to extract this, and anywhere in the code where I have this, I'm going to replace with that. And I'm going to do a global replace. So I'm going to open this open this on an external editor. Look for this. Replace with that in all places, of course, except this one. Save, close, reload. And there you have it. It still works the same. I'm still doing the middle of the screen the same way. It's just a nicer way of doing this without having to repeat this calculation everywhere. It's also more efficient, but I'm not doing this for efficiency. I'm doing this because it reads better. And that is it. That's all I have for you today. We just did a bunch of fixings and refactorings. We didn't really add any new features to the effects that we had, but we have, I think, things that make more sense, that read better, and yeah, just small improvements, making things better. Always good. It always feels good to have a refactoring session or a fixing session. But there are still things to do in the oscilloscope. We could look at all the channels, and I think it would be helpful because we already have one effect that would benefit from this. If we could look at the thing that breaks in, that burns in, not breaks, that burns in speakers, we would like to have all the channels plotted on the page, and we could see that they are inverted in phase. So yeah, there are still things to do with the oscilloscope, and we will get back to it in a future episode. But that's not today. Today we are just fixing the mistakes from the past. Again, thanks to this person for finding the first mistake we fixed on this video. And I hope you learned something on this one. If only that you should make things read better and that you should revisit things and try to fix mistakes from the past. But also, if you're interested in this kind of thing, programming live and learning about audio effects and many other topics, really, anything I find interesting in Reaper or in programming, then if you like this kind of thing, subscribe to the channel because there are many more videos coming out. And I appreciate that you are here. Thanks for watching. I see you on the next one. Bye.